A candidate is a person seeking election in a general local election or by-election. Provincial legislation sets out how candidates may run and finance their election campaigns and advertise their candidacy. So, what is an election campaign? And are there any limits as to how much a candidate can spend and who a candidate can accept monies from? Hi, my name is Gloria Mertens, and this is That's My Take, an interpretation and education about village council proceedings. General local elections are held every 4 years for mayors, councillors, electoral area directors, among others. Candidates serious about getting elected for office will start planning now for their election campaign. An election campaign is a connected series of actions such as advertising, speeches, and meetings designed to elect a candidate to an elected office such as a municipal council or regional district board. Typically, an election campaign involves communicating with the electorate through public appearances and speeches, through advertising on television, radio, the internet, social media, such as Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, in newspapers or in magazines, brochures, signs, posters, and banners, mail inserts and newsletters, and bumper stickers, buttons, or displays, and exhibits. Candidates must file a campaign financing disclosure statement with Elections BC after general voting day, with a filing deadline 90 days after the general voting day. These records are kept for 5 years. The Local Election Campaign Financing Act sets out what information the campaign financing disclosure statement must contain, including details about election expenses and campaign contributions related to the election campaign. Information on this act is available on the Elections BC website, and candidates should look it up for comprehensive information related to funding and conducting an election campaign. Here are a few highlighted points. All candidates must open a campaign account in a savings institution to be used exclusively for the purposes of the election campaign. There are 2 campaign financing periods: the election period from January 1st to September 16th, 2022, and the campaign period September 17th, 2022 to October 15th, 2022. A campaign contribution is the value of money, property, or services provided without compensation to a candidate for campaign use. It can be a donation of money, goods, advance, a deposit, or discount. Campaign contributions of money can be made by cash, check, credit card, or electronic funds transfer. If a candidate gives money to their own campaign, it is a campaign contribution and must be recorded and disclosed in the same way as all other campaign contributions. Campaign contributions can only be made by eligible individuals and cannot be made by organizations. An eligible individual is a resident of BC and a Canadian citizen or a permanent resident. For 2022, eligible contributors can give a total of $1,250 to a local elections campaign. If you give $100 or more to a local elections candidate, your name and contribution amount will be published in Elections BC's Financial Reports and Political Contribution System. An eligible individual cannot contribute more than $50 anonymously to a single election campaign, and it is also prohibited to accept multiple anonymous contributions from the same eligible individual totaling more than $50. The information that must be recorded for all campaign contributions include the value of the contribution, the date of the contribution was made, the full name, mailing address, and if different, residential address of the contributor. It must be noted that candidates are not permitted to use lotteries, raffles, or other gambling activities to raise campaign funds. Campaign period expenses are subject to expense limits, and these vary throughout the province depending on the population and size of the community. An election expense is the value of property or services used in an election campaign. This applies whether the item was used in the election period, the campaign period, or both. Goods produced by a candidate from their own property are not election expenses if the materials were already owned prior to their decision to run for office. Elections BC will publish the updated expense limits no later than May 31st of this year on the Elections BC website. Last election in 2018, the candidate expense limits for Ashcroft were $10,000 for the position of mayor and $5,000 for the position of councillor. Third-party sponsor advertising applies to advertising about a candidate and cannot exceed $750 in our community. Candidates also need to be careful not to exceed their expense limits and to abide by campaign financing and election advertising rules. One such rule is requiring sponsorship information on all election advertising during the campaign period. Sponsorship information includes the name of the financial agent or the candidate, him or herself, the words authorized by in front of the financial agent's name, and a BC phone number, BC mailing address, or email address. Although there are no size requirements for the sponsorship information, it must be clear and readable. Election advertising and campaigning of any sort is prohibited within 100 meters of a voting place. This includes displaying signs, posters, flyers, bumper stickers on vehicles parked outside the voting place, badges worn by sponsors, canvassing or soliciting votes, or otherwise trying to influence electors to vote for a particular candidate. Local governments have the authority to regulate the size, placement, maintenance, and removal of signs and other forms of public advertising. Candidates should read the Village of Ashcroft's sign bylaw and also contact the Chief Election Officer at the village office for clarification. Election campaign rules are aimed at keeping the playing field more equitable, more accessible to a wider number of candidates, more transparent, and ultimately more democratic. At least, that's my take.